Welcome to this installment of People in Legal. Really pleased to have Professor Michael Legg from University of New South Wales on the podcast. Welcome, Michael. So we're here at RelFest26, where everything seems to be AI, and more AI. I wanted to talk to you, though, a little bit just about your journey from practicing in big law, moving into academia, and then how you see the future of the profession, how technology sort of works in that. So yeah, a little bit about your background would be fantastic.
So I started as a legal practitioner and I worked in major Australian law firms doing litigation. I then went and did a Masters of Law at the University of California in Berkeley. That then saw me work in the US. And it was that time working in the US in New York where I first started to see like massive discovery. And that was when, at the very early stages of using technology to try to deal with that huge number of documents. And so that then got me into, thinking about the role of technology in litigation specifically, but for the profession more generally. And then fast forward, that's the thing that's, seen me teach the use of technology to law students in relation to things like litigation, but also with the growth of artificial intelligence, then looking at, well, what does that mean for lawyers and law students and what sort of skills do they need if they're going to go out into practice?
Yeah. And so how do you feel academia is currently grappling with? I mean, the technology and the AI is advancing so fast. How do you prepare today's students for, the world they're going to inhabit tomorrow?
So I think the way law schools are sort of approaching this is they know that there's part of what they teach which they've got to maintain. So even though you might get some great AI, you've still got to be teaching the black letter law so that you're producing law students that are in a position to gain expertise. And then you're starting to go, well, we also need them to have some sort of competency in the technology. So you've got to sort of introduce them to tech and where it can be used in different parts of the law degree, preparing to go into practice. And then the other thing that I think we're very focused on is it's the human skills. So sure, technology is going to come along, but we're still got to work out, well, what's going to be the role of the human lawyer? And what people have started to say is humans need to do the stuff that tech is bad at. And so that's where in a law degree, you're starting to go, okay, critical thinking, judgment, communication skills, empathy, they're the sorts of things that we've got to make sure that the students are learning.
Yeah. And how do you specifically do that? You have them actually work on the tech in a practical way? How does that actually work in a day-to-day environment in the law schools?
So I guess there's, the first thing to say is different law schools will have different approaches.
Yep.
And a lot of that is going to depend on the size of their cohorts. So if you've got a very large a group of students coming through each year, then it's harder to teach the technology in a sort of one-on-one basis. So that means it gets really put to electives. But what you'll do in your core courses is you'll raise the idea of where technology can be used. So the course that I tend to teach is called Resolving Civil Disputes. It deals with civil procedure and alternative dispute resolution. And so what we have started to do there is to go, where does technology sort of intersect? And so one way would be you're looking at technology-assisted review in discovery. But you also start to touch on things like, well, what about service of process? Could you do that with, say, email? What about an online hearing? Can you sort of use a Teams or a Zoom or some other sort of form of technology to be able to conduct a hearing or a trial? And so that's how you sort of bring it in. And so usually what you'll do is you'll give the students some where people are sort of saying, here's how it works. So the very sort of like basic technical side of it, but then you start to raise the issues. So what about procedural fairness? How could this impact in terms of the role of the judge? And that's when you're getting the students thinking about what are the ramifications of adopting technology.
Yeah. And how do you, with everything moving so fast, how do you keep up with everything going on?
Well, I suppose what I found is it is one of those things where you need to get a balance. And, this is probably academic specific, but you need to get a balance between reading the sort of the in-depth academic articles that are coming out in relation to technology, but also making sure you're across like social media and you're seeing the people who are, raising, it's almost like ideas or telling you this is the new thing that's coming along, so that you're at least sort of aware that people are what they're thinking about. And so I guess you try to get that balance between, I want to know what the guys in IT, what the computer science researchers are doing, but I also want to know what's the person who's maybe they're selling a product, they've got a startup or something. What are they saying about use case?
Yep. And so you're involved also with the Law Society of New South Wales and looking at the future of legal practice. Does the whole advent of AI, it obviously has enormous benefits. Is there anything about it that makes you concerned or worried and that we as a profession have to look at?
So, I mean, as an academic, you're meant to be skeptical. I think that the things that probably that I think we need to be worried about are, at one level, you've got to look at what's going to be the future of lawyers. And so I don't think the robot lawyer is really where we're going to head. But you could see in some jurisdictions real sort of lawyers becoming almost like administrative sort of roles. And so you then start to get concerned about, how do we protect the rule of law? How do we allow for people to be able to sort of challenge government? So you have this sort of concern about, like, does AI get rid of lawyers? I don't think you get there, but you've got to be aware of that, because I bet that's how you guard against it. And then you have to be, I guess, concerned about what's it mean for, say, the courts? Because if we're talking about rule of law, the courts they're the sort of the bastion of the rule of law. And so you then start to go, well, if AI is going to creep into their decision making, how does that sort of play out? And do we lose sort of impartiality? Do we lose open justice? If there's some sort of tech solution that's deciding cases, how do we sort of really understand what it's doing? So they're the sorts of things, I guess, at a big level that you worry about. And then the others, I guess, is more when you're looking at the students that you're preparing for practice. And that's when you're sort of going, okay, how do I put them in the best position that they come out of law school and they've got that grounding to be able to be successful? And you've got to keep in mind that you don't learn everything at law school. And so it's not about trying to sort of give them everything that they need. Indeed, what you want to foster is really lifelong learning. You want them to understand that they've got a certain amount of knowledge and they're going to have to keep acquiring that knowledge. But you want to give them the sort of, I guess, the best grounding and jumping off point from that law degree.
Yeah, fantastic. And does all of this make you excited for the future of the profession? Bit nervous? Do you think we're going to have as many legal professionals in 5-10 years from now as we currently do, given that a lot of the work that lawyers had traditionally done is now able to be a little bit more absorbed by AI? How do you think the future looks for the legal profession from a, we know the kind of work they're going to do is going to be a lot more value add in terms of, like, law schools have a certain number of graduates. Are there going to be jobs for them all? How do you sort of feel about that?
I think at the moment we're in a situation where it's a little uncertain or difficult to tell. It seems to me that if the AI does live up to what people are saying about it, there would naturally be less lawyers, because a lot of the sort of administrative type work falls away. So you just need less people to do the work. But at the same time, technology is creating so many novel issues, copyright, privacy, and all of those things intersect with the law. And so that's where you can sort of see, well, lawyers are going to get brought in. Like, every time there's some sort of new development, people are going, oh, well, is that legal? And how do we regulate that? And so that's where you sort of go, well, it does seem as though that's likely to create more work. And so I think what's hard to predict at the moment is where the equilibrium will be. So you can see some roles disappearing, other roles coming along. And I think it's just going to be a question of, well, where do we get to ultimately?
Fantastic. Professor Legg, thank you so much for your time. I know you're really busy today and you're giving the closing keynote at RelFest26. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and thanks for appearing on People in Legal.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.